Alrighty, race fans, welcome to another edition of My Favorite Parts. Well, if you've been following us, we've talked about a number of things. The first thing we did was talk about tools, because that's important in working on your cars. Then we actually got into the car, where we went front to back, talked about all the things and how they coordinate together to make a good, solid racing platform. Well, in this final edition, we're going to talk about controllers, because once you've got all this other stuff running and your car's working right, and for now we're going to assume that your track's right, you might need to understand controllers. So let's jump in. All right, so let's get into controllers. That's always been a hot topic, especially with new people coming in. You know, they may get like a super international race set that's got the Mega G Plus cars and they've got the goofy 120 controllers. They buy a better car from me, Viper, Jag, somebody like that, that's, you know, it's a 6-ohm car. And they put the car on the track, pull the trigger, and almost nothing happens until they get all the way to the end, and then the car just launches. Well, it's because there's a mismatch between the ohm rating of the armature and the ohm rating of the controller. Now, there is no neat little spreadsheet that says if you have this car with this motor, you need this controller. It doesn't exist. I mean, if somebody's got a complete library of every slot car made and then a whole complete spread of controllers and nothing else to do all day, and you know, they want to sit down and do that, knock yourself out. But to date, nobody has. But the rule of thumb is the higher the ohm the armature, the higher the ohm the controller. Conversely, the lower the ohm the armature, the lower the ohm the controller. So with quality cars like a Viper V-Spec, say a Wizard Storm, standard Wizard Storm, that's got a 6-ohm armature in it. The Super 7 car with 6-ohm armatures, possibly any of the Jag cars that have 6-ohm armatures. You know, a 45-ohm controller is a pretty good place to start, and it should get you where you need to go, and then from there you can decide if you want to go higher or lower. But the problem with, say, the Mega G Plus with the little can motor, that's like I got a 15-ohm armature in it, so that's why they have a 120-ohm controller. And you know, like the old T-Jets, they had a high-ohm armature, 16, 17 ohms. I think those old factory controllers, the thumb ones, were maybe 90, somewhere in that area. So anyway, we've got a spread of controllers here. So if you're just starting out, and let's say you've got this Super International Speedway or something like that, modern Tomy AFX set with the 120 controllers, and you want to run a different car like a Viper or Super 7, and you're having problems, the cheap, easy fix, okay, are these Auto World thumb controllers. They'll plug right in. I think they're somewhere around $20, $24 a pair, and I think these are rated at 40 ohms. So this will get you started. Okay, direct plug-in, right? The next step up would be some sort of quality fixed ohm controller. This particular one that we're looking at now, this one here, this is a DS. The DS come 25, 35, 45. They do make them higher. I don't carry them because I don't really think I need a 55 or a 65. Most of your quality cars need lower ohm controllers. As they come, they do not have alligator clips. Okay, so if you wanted to hook these up to a track that has a 3-post hookup, you'd have to get alligator clips and attach to them. But as it sits, if you want to hook this into, say, a Tomy style track, you'd have to whack the plug off of an existing controller and then solder that onto the white and the red wire. You don't, or excuse me, the white and black wire. You don't use red. Red's break. Okay, so you would just maybe bring this back, tape it out of the way, and then make your connections to the white and the black. These are really nice units here. They are solid state. They've got solid state resistor networks in them. If I understand my electronics right, somebody can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not a wire wound like a Parma. Parma was out of the market for a lot of years. There was a lot of things going on with that company, and I think Mid-America bought them out a couple years ago, and they finally got production back up, so the Parma controllers might be back in the market again, but they're wire wound resistors. There's nothing really wrong with them. They feel a little rough compared to the circuit board that you've got with these DS. They're just really nice and smooth. So I sell just piles of these things, okay? But here again, it's fixed ohm, and it doesn't allow you a lot of fine control. So then the next step up would be into the transistorized world. Okay, so there's a couple different options. One of them is an OS3 Lite. Now I've got my stickers on this controller here. This is a single pot unit. This is your sensitivity right up there. And somewhere buried in here, there's a transistor down on this heat sink board here. Okay, and that gives you a lot more adjustability. You're not going to run a modified car or anything like that, but more common things like in the 6 ohm world or T-jets, things like that. These kinds of controllers do well. All right, and it is a 3-wire. You don't have to run red if you don't, but when you hook it up, it's brake and it is not adjustable. So at least you get a brake circuit. This is a DeFalco 2-wire. He makes a couple of different flavors of these. This particular one is more for magnet cars. I think he's got another model that is for pancake motors, and I think the sensitivity pot or the transistor board is different. I'm not sure what, but it's optimized more for pancake cars. I've been selling these. These are pretty good. This doesn't film really well because it's black, but we had different colors for a while until I sold out. And this is a 2-wire. It's black and white, and it comes with, he makes them with the clips on there. And the wires are silicon coated wires, so it's nice and flexible. And they're pretty good units. They've had good reviews. I've messed around with them a little bit. They're nice and smooth. It's having the knob here is really easier to adjust on the fly, as opposed to the OS3, where if you're driving, you've got to kind of reach over and manipulate like that. It's a little less intuitive, but still the OS3 is a good unit, especially if you want brake, because it does come with the brake wire on it. But this is, I'm kind of impressed with this unit here. And they're below $100, both of these, the OS3 Lite and the DeFalco. So it's not a budget controller, but it's a good entry-level transistorized controller. All right, so let's look at the top of the line stuff. We're going to use an OS3 All Pro to talk about the higher end units. I don't have a new DeFalco unit to compare against, but what we'll talk about is applicable to all these high quality, high end units. And then you have to ask yourself, why do I need this? What are all these knobs for? Well, the more knobs, well, maybe better. It's kind of like Tim the Toolman Taylor, more power, right? But it gives you far more adjustability, and if you have you really need a 3-post hookup for these. If you don't have a 3-post hookup, don't buy one of these. Get the DeFalco 2-wire or the Lite, all right? But if you've got a custom routed track with a 3-post hookup, get something like this. So one of the most important knobs is sensitivity, okay? On OS3, the circuit is divided 3 ways. You've got a 3-way switch. The T stands for T-jet, and the M stands for modified, okay? And what that does is it splits the ohm rating of the pot up in 3 basic ranges. There's a bit of an overlap between the ranges. So for instance, if you're on T-jet, if you're at the fastest sensitivity and then you flip it to the middle position, all right, it's probably about the same as the middle position on low, okay? But what this does, instead of having to do everything on, let's just say this is a 100 ohm pot, you would end up with certain classes of cars with a very narrow range of adjustment, okay, and you may not get the fine touch that you really want. So when you have this broken down into different overall ranges, okay, your brain just wants to, you know, pull a little, go a little, pull a lot, go a lot with any car. Doesn't make any difference. Even if it's a T-Jet, Neo car, your brain just wants that sensation, and this really helps you do this. I think on DeFalco, on his units, on some of them you can achieve that through different circuit board arrangements that plug in, okay? I've not really ever used one of those, so I can't really speak to it, but I think that's how that works. So anyway, that's sensitivity. Then you have brake and coast, and what that does in, let's say we're in the brake mode, okay, we'd be in maximum brake there. When the controller is off, okay, when it's physically off and touching this power post back here, it will backfeed current into the track and kind of give you motor braking, okay, opposite current. Some people, I kind of liken it to like when I'm talking with them, like a Jake brake on a truck, exhaust braking. This kind of works like that. So if you've got, say, a T-Jet car that doesn't have a lot of downforce and is pretty rolly, you want brake, so when you get down to the end of the corner and you let up, that car will roll to a stop. A magnet car, you generally run middle to coast, depending on how it's set up. I never set a magnet car up too high to where I needed it. Most of the time, I would run coast with just a little bit of coast in there, not much, just so when I let off the trigger, the car rolls to a stop, okay, and that's feeding positive current into the circuit. They have this other thing called choke. Some people also call that traction control. What that does is modifies the power curve, best I understand it. When your controller is fully on, okay, pegged all the way, the power wire is running through the trigger into a power post there, and it bypasses everything in the transistors or whatever. It's just wide open, straight current. Whatever the track is doing, 18 volts, you're getting that. It's not passing through any transistors or anything else. But with traction control or choke, you can essentially crank voltage out of the circuit as you're going up. It kind of lowers the entire curve. It will just lower the whole curve down. Right? And a good example I always use is like a Lifelike M car. They don't have a lot of downforce, and they got a 6.5 ohm armature, so they're pretty fast. So if you're in a club environment on a routed track running 18 volts and the car feels too herky-jerky, you just start dialing choke into it, okay, and it becomes more drivable, right? And you can still run sensitivity. And then, you know, you get in the straightaway, you peg the throttle, you'll get full speed, but anything less than full throttle, okay, then you have this reduced power curve. It's really a handy thing to have sometimes. Even I've had a situation or two with a magnet car that just felt like it had too much giddy up and go to you know, effectively keep you from making errant trigger inputs, and just dial a touch of choke into it, and you know, then adjust my sensitivity where I can get the car to feel correctly, and it works. So it helps your brain, or maybe a better way to put it, your brain doesn't have to adjust to a fixed trigger to figure out how to drive a car on a track at a certain point in time. You can have all these different adjustments to kind of help get that pull a little, go a little, pull a lot, go a lot sensation. Okay? All right, so that wraps that up. And here again, if you got any questions with this kind of stuff, it'd probably be better if you email me and or call me if you had a really good technical question on this, on how to make a choice. All right, guys, so thank you for joining me. and we'll certainly do more workbench videos as, you know, specific parts come out and talk about specific things. All right, thank you very much.